I'm kinda regretting doing this video already, but here we go! Hi everyone! A little while ago I did a whole illustration using only my green markers, so by popular demands, because a lot of you requested me to use this color next. So today let's use all of my blue markers. So I went on a marker hunt searching for every single little blue marker that I could find here in my art studio, and boy do I have a lot of markers hidden away. I have now collected all the blue markers that I could find. So we have Copic markers, we have Pro markers, Letraset, Tria and Flex markers, and we have Spectrum R, Tri-Blend, Illustrator and just the regular markers. Ohuhu markers, both the regular ones and the brush tip ones. Everblend art markers from Arteza, and we have some blue markers from Touch 5. Artist Loft markers that I should really just throw away, but I'm just too attached to my markers, I suppose. And then lastly we have these two random markers, a magic marker twin tip and a cure color marker. So let's get into the tedious work of swatching all of them. And also, of course, by swatching the art supplies, I will see what kinds of blue tones that I have to work with. We got warmer blues, we got cooler blues, so yeah, let's get into it. Something I realized when I was swatching the markers is that I have a lot of blue markers, a lot of markers in general. Oh my, once I'm done with this series, I'm definitely gonna give away and throw away some of them. But anyway, some markers I had to discard because they were just dried out or because they were a little too green. I think originally before swatching them there were just over 100 markers, but after doing some sorting we're left with 93 markers, which is still a lot. So yeah, here we have all of them, a lot of blues in all different kinds of tones, and here I'm actually sorting them after all those different tones, all from purpley blues to greenish blues, lighter tones, darker tones, just to make it a little easier to find the different colors when I'm drawing with them. So after all of that, let's finally draw something. I needed to make something that would fit a lot of blue colors, obviously. In my green marker challenge video, I did like an ancient temple ground with a cat statue and some cats sitting around it, and I thought that maybe it could be fun to keep that theme for this series and do a bunch of these cat statues in different environments for each color. So I was thinking of maybe an underwater scene, which would be very fitting with this color, but I kind of circled back to this idea with like a forest or a jungle pond and waterfalls and stuff like that, and then doing like a cross section so you can actually see the bottom of the pond at the same time. I thought it was a really fun idea, and it isn't like anything I've ever done before, so it is something new. I really like underwater environments with a lot of plants and creatures. It has always been fascinating to me, so that felt very inspiring. So I'm doing the sketch and the line work in Procreate on my iPad as usual. I had to use different colors for the different layers to not confuse myself. There is a lot of stuff going on in this illustration, so I'm very happy I made the line work digitally and then I printed it on a thick Bristol board. Alright, so finally let's dive into the coloring. So I had this strategy that once I've used one marker, I would cross it out from the swatch list and put it in a separate box just to keep track of the colors that I've used and to more easily see what colors I had left to work with. But let me tell you, it got very confusing and a bit tedious to keep track of all the markers and trying to find good spots for them where to use the different blues, but I tried to spread out the different tones to get a good balance. Something that I was a little worried about was to run out of space and not be able to use all the markers. One mistake that I may have done was drawing a lot of similar things, like the cliffs in the background and the rocks and the statue. They're all taking up a lot of area in the illustration, and it is all the same color and texture. It is all stone material, I suppose. So I tried to layer as many colors as I could in that area to make sure to be able to cross off as many markers as possible from the list. So some of the markers I only used to make like little dots with, just to be able to count them as used. But even if some areas got borderline overworked, all the different layers also added more depth and contrast to the illustration, which I really love. I might also add that I will probably have to cut out a pretty big chunk of the footage for this illustration. If you're wondering why there might be larger jumps in the editing, I worked on this piece, including the sketching and the line art, probably for more than 10 hours, and even if it is nice with longer videos, I can't really have it too long. Usually I spend maybe 2, 3, 4 hours on a marker piece, which is a little easier to fit into a video, but in this piece there are so many details and so many colors to use, and I really try to take my time with it, planning out where to put the different colors, and I may also have given myself a challenge choosing to draw a nature scene with blue markers only. I had to do a lot of thinking and a lot of testing to find out good color combination and color placement to make it look somewhat natural and balanced. And I think one of the problems was that I had a lot of very bright and saturated blues, and it was kind of hard to fit them into this scene. Mid through the drawing, I was starting to regret that I didn't draw that full underwater scene instead. I think that would have made it a lot easier for me, but I also think that this scene is a little more interesting, to be honest, and it is good to challenge yourself sometimes. So I had this one color, Polar Blue I think it was called, a pro marker color that I came to use a lot, especially for the cliffs and the rocks. It was the only more desaturated grayish blue that I had to work with, and it was so great to tone down some of the brighter blues with and give it a more natural look. And I have to say that blue is not an easy color to work with, especially not in an illustration like this. Also, blue is not my favorite color, so that might also have something to do with it. I mean, some blues can be really beautiful, but it's not my favorite color to incorporate into my own art, especially not the brighter ones. I think the hardest tone to incorporate into this illustration were the darker, more saturated violet blue tones that there were surprisingly many of, and it's not a color that you naturally find in the nature. It was hard to try to portion them out to make it look fairly balanced. It is such a punchy blue, but I tried to tone them down a bit with some other blues and kind of camouflage them a bit, which worked pretty well. But I'm also really happy that I had them because they also added more vibrancy and contrast to the whole piece. And another thing I was working a lot with was to add warmth to the illustration, which is kind of tricky working with a cool color like blue, but having the greener blues really helped to add more warm, natural tones to the scene. But still, I was a little disappointed, I guess, with how it was turning out. I wasn't a fan of the cooler tones, especially since I really loved the warm and cozy feeling in the green marker illustration that I did before. This one didn't feel as inviting and as magical, but once I finished the drawing and I stopped recording and everything, and I was sitting and looking at it, I more and more started to look at it as an evening or early morning scene instead of a day scene as I originally intended, and that really changed my whole view of this illustration. Suddenly the darker and cooler tones made sense. So after I thought I was finished, I actually went back in again, darkening the sky. I added some stars and a little moon, and now I really love this piece. The lighting may be a little off though, since I was originally going for a day scene, but it is okay, I think. But it is fascinating how you can change your mindset and the way you look at an illustration, and it can change the whole feeling of it. That is amazing. Also, I want to mention that if you like this illustration, it is available as art prints and other things over at my Redbubble shop. I will have a link in the description box below, so feel free to check it out. I truly appreciate your support. But yeah, I really love how this illustration is turning out, and my thoughts about the scene itself is that way back in time this was a garden or maybe a park, or why not also a temple ground that got flooded, and that is why you can see this old tree stump sticking up in the water to illustrate that it once was dry land. And then after time fish started to live there and all of these water plants and clams and snail, and I kind of wish that I've added something more interesting to the bottom, but I also didn't want to cram in too many details. I didn't want to take away too much focus from the cats sitting on the rocks and on the tree stump. The cats turned out so cute. I think it adds so much life to the whole illustration. I especially like the one sitting on the rocks lurking at the fish beneath the surface. So yeah, I struggled a lot with this piece, trying to fit in and portion out all the different colors and actually use all of the markers. It was a challenge, but I'm really happy I took my time with it and that I changed it in last minute to a night scene instead of a day scene. It just worked a lot better in my opinion, and it made a lot more sense with all the cooler tones. Let me know what you think. And if you like this series and want me to continue, please let me know what color I should use the next time. Also, should I continue this theme with the statue and the cats? I think it could be a really lovely series of drawing after a while, like a rainbow. And yeah, it was actually really fun doing an underwater scene for once, even if it is just a half one. And that is something that I rarely do, so it was fun doing something new. So yeah, I think that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed this video and the art. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like on this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I hope I will see you next time. Keep drawing my happy cats. Bye!